Members, it's the appointed time. We have a quorum. I call to order the meeting of the panel on constitutional affairs.
根據議程嘅第一項
Agenda item number 1, information papers issued since last meeting. There's been no information paper issued since last meeting. Agenda item number 2, items for discussion at the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for the 28th of April 2025, Monday at 2:30 p.m. The administration proposed to discuss one item, development of the Guangdong-Hong Kong-Macau Greater Bay Area GBA. 2 hours of discussion. If members have no views, we will discuss this discussion item at the next meeting. Agenda item number 3, 2025 voter registration campaign. Please refer to LC paper CB brackets 2452/2025 brackets 03. It is a paper provided by the administration and CB brackets 2452/2025 brackets 04. Let's invite the administration to join us. Members who would like to speak, please press the button to request to speak.
All
right. I'll give the floor to the Undersecretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Clement Wu. Please take us through the paper CB brackets 2452/2025 brackets 03. Undersecretary, the floor is yours. Thank you, Chairman. Today I'm going to take members through the 2025 voter registration campaign information papers. Regular voter registration campaigns are organized on an annual basis. We encourage eligible residents in Hong Kong to be registered as electors. We also ask them to update the personal particulars. The deadline is the 2nd of June. This year, we'll continue to step up targeted publicity for those who are who are eligible to be registered as voters. Apart from voter registration counters, the arrangements will be extended to the right of a vote section of the Immigration Department. So for those who have obtained residency in Hong Kong, they will also be able to register as a voter. With the launch of the IM Smart Plus, user experience is enhanced. This year, we will also promote the use of IM Smart Plus to encourage residents to update their particulars. For those who have already filled in their information on IM Smart Plus, they just need to press a few buttons before they can register as a voter. They can also submit address proof on the app IM Smart. I will now give the floor to my colleagues from the Registration and Electoral Office Rio to take members through the other parts of the paper. Thank you. This paper briefs members on 2025 voter registration campaign. The Legislative Council general election will be held this year. The scale of the VR campaign this year will be comparable to those in previous election years. The target of this year is to promote new registration of voters. We also appeal to members of the public to update their address and personal particulars, especially for those who have moved houses. The statutory deadline is the 2nd of June in relation to the annual VR cycle. Starting from now to the 2nd of June, members of the public can register as voters. Then they can cast their vote in the legislative general election later this year. For those who have already registered, they need not re-register again. However, when it comes to any changes in their address, these people should, by the 2nd of June, submit an application to RIO. Whether for new registrants or those who apply to change their address, they need to submit their application and the proof in order for RIO to verify their address. In accordance with the laws of Hong Kong, the 2025 provisional registers and the omission list will be published by the 1st of August. The revising officer will make a ruling in relation to these applications. RIO will publish the final register on or before the 25th of September. We have already drawn reference from our previous experience in the formulation of the 2025 VR campaign. We adopt a mix of different measures to mount publicity. In 2025 VR campaign will focus on promoting the statutory VR deadline. We encourage members of the public to be registered as a voter. We also remind members of the public to provide address proof. We also remind members of the public to make use of the Online Voter Information Inquiry System, OVIES, or REO's hotline to verify their registration particulars. In addition, RIO will continue to encourage members of the public to submit their applications on IM Smart and update their personal particulars. Or they can also access the Online Voter Information Inquiry System to do so. The relevant information is set out in paragraphs 12 to 15. There will be API announcements in the public interest to be broadcast at public transport stations, and so on. There will also be posters in different residential estates and government buildings in different districts. On websites, mobile apps, there will also be advertisements to enhance publicity. We adopt targeted approach to get in touch with potential voters. We remind them to update their registration particulars if they have moved houses. That includes the registration of person's office and the right of abode section of the Immigration Department. There will be counters set up to help potential voters. This is especially in place to appeal to students who will be turning 18 to register as electors. There will also be mobile registration counters to help members of the public to submit their application or to update their particulars. We will also be in touch with organizations targeting talent or quality migrant schemes to appeal for their registration after they have attained permanent residency in the future. That is my conclusion. That is my introduction. I welcome members' questions. 5 members have pressed the button to request to speak. They are in order: Professor Priscilla Leung, Dr. Tik-Shi Yuen, Mr. Robert Lee, Ms. Carmen Khan, Ms. Doreen Kong, Ms. Nixie Lam, and Mr. Yim Kong. So we have 2 more members in addition to the 5 members. Members, each of you has 5 minutes, questions and answers included. Professor Priscilla Leung. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Undersecretary, for your introduction. Regarding the publicity of voter registration VR, I've been satisfied with the initiatives of the administration. So I believe the online voter information inquiry system will help members of the public to register as voters. I have 2 main concerns. One, for elderly people, for the font size of the letter sent to elderly people in Hong Kong. When they have moved houses, or because of different reasons they have to re-register again, how can they reply to you without affecting their voter status? The font size of some letters is indeed too small. The legalese in the letter may not be easily understandable to elderly people, so I'd like to follow up on it. We don't want to see voters going to vote, but then they are rejected from doing so. Some voters go to the polling station, but then they aren't allowed to vote. For example, they live in one particular area, but then somehow their address is changed by somebody else. Therefore, when they went to a particular polling station, they aren't allowed to vote. Some voters in the Whampoa district weren't allowed to vote. The address had been changed by somebody else. I'm not sure why this would happen, but I'd like to remind the administration of this situation. Please prevent this from happening again. Applying for voters is one matter, but then for those who have already registered as a voter, when they go to a polling station but then they aren't allowed to vote, this will be a huge letdown for them. Undersecretary, thank you. Regarding the letter or the situation mentioned by Professor Priscilla Leung, I'll give the floor to Rio to reply to Professor Leung. Thank you. Regarding elderly people, this matter has come to our attention as well. We provide application forms where the font size is larger for elderly people. We also remind elderly people, if need be, they can call up the hotline and ask any questions they may have. In case of any questions, they can call us up, and our operators will render assistance. Well, excuse me, I'd like to chip in. I'm not referring to registration. Some of them have already been registered as a voter. Sometimes they receive letters to which they need to reply, or they'll have to update their address. The font size of the letters is indeed too small. If they don't live with younger family members, they don't know what is happening. Understood. Thank you, member. I will look into the situation with my colleagues. We will also see how to improve the font size of the letters. We'll make it easily understandable for elderly people, be it the contents or the font size of the letters. We'll go back and study the situation. Thank you. Regarding the next question, that is when voters probably go to a wrong polling station. In our promotion stage, that is the second stage, from the 1st to the 25th of August 2024. We will enhance publicity in this regard. We want to make sure the information of voters on the register is correct. So until the 2nd of June, it will be the first stage, and from the 1st to the 25th of August, it will be the second stage. Just now, Professor Priscilla Leung mentioned the issue about font size. When you send letters, there may not be a mechanism in place to check the age of the recipient of the letters. So you can use a larger font size. That is the simplest solution. Or you can use easily understood language in the letter. This will be easier for elderly people to understand the letter. If the letter is too long, elderly people may not be able to understand the entire letter. You need to make the letters user-friendly. Just now you mentioned checking on the register. Well, Of course, this is okay, but elderly people may not do so. You need to tell elderly people whom they can turn to in order to solve any problems they have. Say you can tell them which department to go to. For example, you can tell them to go to the district office if need be. You need to tell voters in advance. Thank you.
Next member, Dr. Teck Chi-yun. Thank you, Chairman. Naturally, we support the government's effort to launch a campaign to encourage more electors to register. Now, we need the voters register to be accurate and updated. In the past, when we conducted a home visit, we found that the elector had already moved out. And when we mailed electioneering materials, many of the posts were returned because the address was wrong or the elector has emigrated. So besides encouraging more electors to register, is there a more efficient mechanism to fine-tune the voters register to make it more accurate and updated? On one hand, we can prevent waste because with an inaccurate register, it will give rise to a lot of waste. And also that would reduce the voters' turnout. So for outdated information, for example, electors who have emigrated or changed the address, how can we update the voters register to reflect the actual situation? Now, for electors who have registered, if the electors know the polling date earlier in advance, they can prepare for it. So can you tell the voters when the polling day will be so as to encourage more voters to turn out? Under Secretary, thank you. Now, the VR campaign each year includes ensuring that the voters register is up to date. And also we would conduct a publicity campaign. We would encourage electors to go online and check whether their details are correct. Now, back in 2023, many of the polling card sent to electors were returned because of erroneous addresses. Now, the registration and election office would conduct a review on these returned polling cards and try to reach out to these electors again through emails or by phone. So it would be best if electors provide more means of contact to the REO. In that case, we would have more methods to reach out to electors for promotion of election and updating contacts. Now, our teams have reached out to new public housing estates and new private housing projects to remind electors to update their personal particulars. On the second question about this year's general electrical election by the end of the year, we don't have a date yet, but that would be at the end of the year. We will be able to confirm the date very soon, and then we would provide the details to the public as soon as possible. Dr. Teck? Now, the Under-Secretary said a number of methods would be adopted to update the register. Now, if someone has moved to a new flat other than new public housing estates or new private residential housing, that would be a gap. Now, many electors have emigrated from Hong Kong, and they have no incentives to update the personal particulars anymore. Now, in terms of announcements of the polling day, there is great anticipation for the event, so please tell us the polling day as soon as possible. Under Secretary, we will notify the public of the date as soon as possible. Mr. Herman Zhe, thank you. Concerning updating the voters register, we will conduct cross-checking with other government departments, for example, the Immigration Department. We will cross-check whether the electors' details are consistent with those on the voters registration. So for electors residing in PRH, we also conduct cross-checking with the relevant authority. I just want to say that the electors themselves also have a responsibility to provide us with the most updated personal details. So that's why we stress that the public should provide us with the latest details if there are changes. I think what Dr. Tick asked is a very important question. I would like to follow it up further using my time. Now, according to our past experience, there were a lot of polling cards returned in the previous election. Now, I don't think the situation would improve significantly. Now, if someone has moved out, the current occupants would make a note on the letter that the previous owners have moved out and returned the letter. For those careless occupants, they will just throw the letter into the rubbish bin. Now, if there are 1 million electors authorizing you to check their details, then it would cost a lot of resources. You need to verify the address one by one. That would be very time-consuming. So I suggest thinking of another way. Since there is a major publicity campaign, can you send a leaflet to each elector? You are reminding the electors to update their details by a certain deadline. For simple changes, they simply need to check the boxes and fill in the new data and return the letter to the REO. So that would be a more proactive way to get the ball rolling. You will have a much larger possibility to succeed. So for cases mentioned by Professor Priscilla Leung, people who have moved, many of these people are elderly people. We need to ensure that the elderly people are given sufficient information to exercise their voting right. For youngsters, they are very tech-savvy, but elderly people don't have this advantage. So the example I gave was just an example. So please come up with ways to make the voters register more accurate in the future. So thank you, members, for allowing us to interject here. Mr. Robert Lee. Thank you, Chairman. Now, the 2025 VR campaign is very important. So I thank the Chairman for allowing me, a non-member, to speak my field here. Now, the paper mentioned that for changes in particulars, addresses, or even mergers or personnel changes in eligible companies, they need to fill in a form. So it is very important to remind the public to update the personal details so as to boost the election turnout. Now, since the previous election, there have been a number of changes. So I would like to speak from the perspective of the financial services sector. According to the law, Cap 542, Section 20U, voting for the financial services sector. Now, the gold and silver market is also an eligible voter. It is now a corporation, and it has 100 subsidiaries under the name. So these subsidiaries are very eager to retain the voting right. I don't think this situation is unique to the financial services sector. I would like to know how these cases will be handled. This is not a change in capacity or mergers or restructuring. It is just a technical change. So how can we ensure that these companies can keep their voting rights? Declaration of interest. The company in which I am a director is also a subsidiary under the gold and silver market, and I'm also a director to the parent company. Under Secretary, thank you. Concerning the financial services sector, it is under the FSTB's purview, so the FSTB will follow up on the matter, please be assured. Now, our promotional campaign targets registered electors. First, the elector needs to register as an elector first before they can apply for the voting rights in the subsectors. Now, for changes in the financial services sector and other sectors, relevant bureaus will follow up on the changes. I thank the government for your work. Now, my example was the financial services sector, but I think this is ubiquitous to other sectors as well. At the parent company level, the gold and silver market has been talking with the FSTB as well. Now, I hope the CMAB would step up cross-bureau and cross-departmental communication to ensure that companies without any material changes can retain their voting right. I see the Undersecretary nodding. Now, for electors in the functional constituency, there is only a change starting from this year. So this is the new change. I urge the government to take the initiative to reach out one by one to these electors. There are not that many electors in the functional constituency anyway. So remind them to update the details in time so that we can maximize the voter space. Next, Ms. Carmen Kan. Thank you, Chairman. From paragraphs 1 to 6 on the paper, I learned about the cycle for the coming election. Now, the deadline is the 2nd of June, registration for, new registration for this cycle. So compared with last year's promotional campaign, I looked at your Facebook post last year. So I suggest you offer an information package covering various scenarios. If you are registered and there's nothing to update, there's nothing you should do. If you have moved but registered, you should update the details by the 2nd of June. Now, for eligible, now for those who would be of age by the 25th of September, they would be eligible as well. Now, some voters might misunderstood that they must be of age by the 2nd of June. So we need to clear this up with the young people. And also there are some people who are already of age but have not yet registered. They need to be reminded as well. And also there is a group of people who have received an inquiry from the REO, and they need to reply by the 2nd of June. So you need to tell people what they need to do under each scenario. And also I wonder whether the promotional campaign is ongoing. We need people to know that failing to reply the inquiry from the REO, they would lose their eligibility. And then they will have to check whether their names are on the omissions list. Then they may have to file an appeal. So about the changes in registered address, I heard complaints that the I'm Smart is only good for notifying or reminding the voters to update their address. You can't update your address via the I'm Smart app. So can you do that with the app?
Under Secretary, thank you. I'll give the floor to Rio. Thank you, member, for your views regarding how we can improve the package of infographics. I thank member for giving us your view. Actually, voter registration is available throughout the whole year. Once someone attains the permanent residence, one can already apply to be a voter. This is the voter registration year, and we remind members of the public to be registered before the 1st of June. That is exactly the meaning of the annual voter registration. But then any time in a year, we welcome members of the public to register as a voter. Regarding inquiry letter, by the 16th of May, we send inquiry letters when we consider appropriate. When members of the public receive the inquiry letter, please return the letter as soon as possible. The public may fax, email, or post the reply to the inquiry letter to us. All these forms are acceptable. Regarding the address proof on I Am Smart, it's actually the same. When members of the public cannot provide an address proof immediately, then we accept any submission of address proof afterwards. Any follow-up, Ms. Carmen Khan? In election year, I suggest that we do more. Last year, publicity only started on the 20th of May. This year, we may start earlier. And thank you for reminding us of the date. That is the 16th of May. By this date, members of the public must reply to the inquiry letter. I'd like to know whether the inquiry process has already started, or is it in operation throughout the whole year? Well, when officers have doubts on any case, we may send inquiry letters throughout the entire year. Do you have any figures in relation to the number of inquiry letters sent? I don't have any figures right now. Well, I think you should send the inquiry letters if you believe an elector has already moved out of the address. Otherwise, there will be problems that we'll have to follow up on. Ms. Carmen Khan made a good point. The deadline and the registration date may be just a few days apart. You may liaise with the Education Bureau. You may send letters to the school heads of secondary schools. The aim is to inform students who reach the age of 18 as soon as possible, so they won't have to fill in the form just when they turn 18. If their birthday is beyond the 2nd of June, they would have already missed the deadline. If you can inform school heads earlier, then we may boost the voter registration rate. Thank you. Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chairman. A high VR rate can definitely help with the success of an election. I have a few questions. Rio has $1.8 billion for the activities this year, including the election per se. How much will be spent on voter registration campaign this year? And another question is about KPI. What KPIs do you have? In theory, you should have a KPI. What is it? Regarding the electronic registration of voters, it may not be suitable for elderly people. There are quite many words. It's quite complicated for elderly people. So will you consider simplifying the template of electronic voter registration? You can reduce the number of words. That will make it easily understood. In some other jurisdictions, guidance is provided to electors to fill in the forms. That will help potential voters to navigate throughout the application process more easily, especially elderly people. Can we make it simpler? You mentioned the procedures are quite cumbersome when one applies to change the address. In the long run, you may have to rely on big data that will encourage data interoperability. Say IRD, Transport Department, when one pays tax or rates, you can track any change in the address. Will you consider allowing information sharing or data interoperability when an elector has changed his or her address? You can change the address in the system so that not as many letters will be returned as a result. Thank you. I'll give the floor to the Rio regarding two of the questions you asked. I'll take the other question. In 2023, about $30 million were spent on voter registration publicity. This year, the expenses to be incurred will be comparable. Regarding our goal, the focus has already been set out in the information paper. For those who have not yet registered, please do so by the 2nd of June. However, there's no hard and fast KPI that we have set. We'll continue with publicity. For those who have obtained personal residency, they are eligible and they can register as a voter. We have targeted publicity events, but we don't have any KPI set in stone. Different policy bureaus and departments provide different services to the public. member mentioned big data or data interoperability among policy bureaus. We hope to obtain consent from the public. Then, when they provide personal particulars to departments of the government, they can be shared among different policy bureaus, so they can enjoy even more convenient services provided by the government. Rio, please. Regarding the electronic voter registration, well, basically, based on what I know, name, address, identity card number, these are the required particulars. Mobile phone number, email address. We can communicate with electors more conveniently with these pieces of information. Regarding how we can make the form even more user-friendly, we'll go back to study the form. But basically, the information required is largely the same. Follow-up, Ms. Kong? Thank you, Chairman. Can Rio consider simplifying your form? I've taken a look at the form. I'm required to read a large chunk of texts before I'm asked to register. I am also required to upload a lot of different information. If I am an elector of 3 constituencies, do I need to apply twice? Say if I am from the GC, the FC, as well as an elector myself, that is EC. Well, if you are from a GC, you will have to register. If you are from FC, then you will have to register again. Thank you. Next member, Ms. Nixie Lam. Thank you. Just now I've heard the introduction from the administration. There's online publicity and other forms of publicity as well. These are quite passive, so to speak. We hold an election every 4 years. Be it LegCo or DC, I understand one can register throughout the entire year. Every year there are people moving houses. There is new housing estate every year. They will have to register their new address. Have you considered liaising with property management companies? So within the recent 4 years, can you enhance liaison with these housing estates so you can run campaigns to collect the latest information about the address of voters? We want to make sure our money spent is well spent. It's very clear you can target the new housing estates. You can also consider working with district offices. This will enhance your liaison with members of the public. More liaison will promote community harmony. Undersecretary, thank you. I will ask Rio to supplement. For houses under the housing department, definitely will know members of the public who have moved. When care teams make home visits, they will distribute these flyers or promotional booklets regarding private flats. I'll give the floor to my colleague. In private flats, we send letters by way of general mail to remind residents to be registered as voters. Regarding public housing estates, we work with the housing department to conduct information checks. If there are new residents moving into public housing estates, we send letters for them to update their address.
嚇咁好嘅，咁但你哋會冇數據分析啊？
Ms. Nixie Lam. Do you have an analysis of the data for us? It takes money to send out the circulars, and many people nowadays don't even read the letters. So I wonder how effective your effort is, especially for private housing estates. There is a line of new housing blocks in an area in Hong Kong with some 200,000 new residents. So how effective would your reaching out efforts be? Now for PRH, it is easier. However, it is more difficult for private housing. So how effective is your effort? If they are underwhelming, we need to think of new ways. Mr. J? Thank you. Now we adopt a multi-pronged approach in voters registration. We don't have a breakdown on why the voters registered. And which method is the most effective. So we don't know whether they update their personal particulars simply because we have sent a letter. Now, if you receive a form from an elector that the particulars have changed, then according to the address, you will know whether that is a new housing block or an old building. That would help you analyze the data. Ms. Nixie Lam is right. Since we are spending so much money on the campaign, we must know what is the most effective means. If a means is proven to be ineffective, we need to find an alternative. Ms. Nixie Lam? Just very briefly, this is not an exam where we need to score a full mark. Let's say if you have sent a circular to a certain neighborhood, then you can gauge in the subsequent 2 or 3 months what is the increase in percentage of voters in the area. Then you will know whether your method is working. I think we will ask for these data next time. Now, whenever there is a conveyance, there would always be a record. So you can ask the relevant departments for the data. You can simply ask these departments to put in a leaflet in the conveyancing documents to remind the voters to update their particulars. That won't cost a lot of money. If you look at the utility bills, you can see that a lot of information is available on it. Mr. Yim Kong. Now, I belong to a constituency that represents the Chinese enterprises. So this is the 7th term of general election that our sector has been participating in. So some members have registered in the Business 1 subsector, some in Business 2. Now they are categorized into Business 3 because they are Chinese enterprises. So I wonder whether these constituents need to withdraw their application from Business 2 and then apply for voting rights under Business 3. Now the deadline, is it the 2nd of June or the 25th of September? These constituents haven't undergone any material changes. These are just technical changes. Now, some members said they hope the government would reach out more to people who are going to come of age in a few months' time. With the technology nowadays, can you shorten the gap between the 2nd of June and the 25th of September? Every year, there are tens of thousands of people gaining permanent residency in Hong Kong. Now, for those with a single entry permit who are going to become permanent residents in Hong Kong, can you encourage them to register in advance? Just like those young people who are going to come of age soon, can you let these single entry permit holder to register as a voters first, so as to facilitate the voting? Under Secretary, I will defer the first question to the REO. Now, in terms of eligibility, the deadline is the 2nd of June, but if you are going to be 18 years old on the 25th of September, you can register. Now, the 2nd of June is a statutory requirement. We have reached out to secondary and post-secondary institutions for promotion. For reminding young people who are going to come of age to register as elector. So this is a focus of this year's campaign. We have been conducting this campaign in schools and other places. Mr. Jie, thank you. For functional constituency, electors can only register under one category. So if the constituent is eligible for 2 subsectors, then they need to choose one. Either they can choose to remain in the original subsector, or they can move to a new one. In any event, the deadline is the 2nd of June. Mr. Yim? Now, for those who are yet to obtain permanent residency, they can register in advance, and so if they will become permanent residents by the 25th of September, they can register. So that's the arrangement for those who are going to come of age by the 25th of September. What about those who are soon to have stayed for 7 years in Hong Kong? Now, we were saying that as long as you are 18 years old on the 25th of September, you can register in advance. In other words, for single entry permit holder, they need to have obtained permanent residency by the 2nd of June. Now, that brought me back to my question. There are tens of thousands of prospective voters who are going to be eligible soon. But since we still have 3 months' time, you should make good use of the time frame to reach out to this group of people. Can we shorten this gap to allow more people to register as elected? Since this is an election year, this is ever more important. Assistant Secretary, please switch on Mr. Wesley Lai's microphone. Now, the age eligibility is somewhat different with residency. Now, age relates to the date, so there is certainty for a person whether he will be 18 years old by a certain date. On the other hand, residency depends on the confirmation from the abode rights of abode session under the Immigration Department. So if they are qualified for permanent residency, then the Immigration Department, the rights of abode session, would send a letter to the person in question. So the age eligibility is somewhat different from the residency requirement. Now, in terms of Commercial 3 registration, the subsector, the eligibility is the same as before. An applicant needs to fulfill the requirements under CAP 542. And like the Undersecretary said, you can only register under one constituency. So if one is registered under Commercial 3, as long as you provide your details to the REO, then the REO will handle the application for you. So there is still one more question yet to be answered. That is whether the deadline for providing the particulars can be delayed. With the technology nowadays, we don't need such a long lead-up time to the election. So please consider Mr. Yim's suggestion. Mr. Tang Fei. Thank you. Some members mentioned that we should encourage secondary students who are soon to be 18 to register as electors in school. Now, in 2024, the number of DSE students in day school who are under 18 years old was 20,000. For candidates above the age of 18, there were also 20,000, so 50-50. So that's the data by May 2024. So some 20,000 DSE candidates of the age of 18. So with that reference in mind, it may be important to encourage teachers in schools to register as electors. In the previous round of election, among all the functional constituencies, teacher is the largest group. There is 80,000 people. For many reasons, however, compared with the previous election, we have lost some 2,000 to 3,000 teachers on the registered. And that may be down to reasons for school closures and so on, but anyway, we still have a large group of teachers. Now, some teachers have emigrated. And also, teachers are the middle class, so it is very normal for them to buy new flats and move to new houses. So I think teachers should be a priority group when you reach out to remind them to update their particulars. Now, students is another group, but teachers should be the first one you reach out to because they need to be reminded. Thank you.
Undersecretary, any response? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tang, for your views. Thank you. Next member, Mr. Lee Chen-kang. Thank you, Chairman. It is a civic responsibility to be a voter for all of us. So let's reflect on it. Why don't we automatically turn all permanent residents voters? Why do they have to register as a voter? We wouldn't have to waste a lot of resources on the VR campaign. Just now, as Ms. Nixie Lam said, there are new housing estates. I'd like to ask, what is the rate of new voters? At the Immigration Department, there are registration counters, but then people will have to go to the counters themselves in order to register as a voter. So what can we do to help people at the immigration counters to make a quick decision to become a voter? Every year we discuss this agenda item, that is the voter registration campaign. Is the ratio on an increase or on a decrease? Under Secretary, these are questions in relation to policies. Well, in Hong Kong, casting a vote is voluntary. Whether members of the public will go to vote, this is entirely voluntary. However, we encourage electors to update their personal particulars on the system. They can take part in different elections having regard to their different identities in society. Regarding any targets, we don't have any KPI set in stone, as another member has already asked just now. In 2023 District Council election, expenses on voter registration were about $30 million. In 2025, we expect the figures to be comparable. We encourage members of the public who have reached the age of 18 to register as a voter at the registration of persons offices. We have added the right of a vote section this year. Just now we mentioned publicity online, offline, street booth, schools, care teams, home visits, the distribution of flyers, and so on. Members just now put forward a lot of good suggestions. They were all about how to encourage members of the public to be registered as voters. We'll do our level best to encourage members of the public to register as a voter. Mr. Lee, well, the Undersecretary fails to answer my questions. That is automatically turning permanent residents at the age of 18 to be a voter. Just now we mentioned $30 million or so. How much is spent on each registration on average? We need to quantify the expenditure. Will you collaborate with the relevant regulatory body or housing department in relation to new housing estates? Will you work with the housing authority or the housing society? We have been mentioning publicity, but then what is the result? Undersecretary, any supplement? Well, I'd like to emphasize in Hong Kong, whether one goes to vote is voluntary. I'll see if Rio has anything else to add in relation to figures. Mr. Lai? Well, I'll talk about what we do with property management companies. For the voter registration campaign this year, we work with the Property Management Association this year. We work with them so they will display posters and promotional materials in public places. There will also be video clips about our campaign on the television in public places. In public housing estates, there are targeted approaches as well. Say, there will be street booths to be set up by Rio. For new housing estates, as member mentioned, because these housing estates are new, when people move in, whether voters or not, we want to boost the voter registration rate as well. As to quantifying the expenses, as the Undersecretary said, it's actually very difficult to quantify each registration. However, for new registration or updating of personal particulars, we remind current voters, even if there is no need for them to change their personal particulars, they can update their latest personal particulars, or they can check their voter registration status online. So our campaign is a mix of different policy initiatives. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. Well, I think my question is similar to Mr. Lee's. We know our financial position of the government right now. We need to save as much as we can. In 2023, $13.6 million, $15.69 million, and $13.41 million for another year. In 2021, $14.35 million. Please correct me if I'm wrong. It's about $13 million or $40 million or so in previous years. As the administration said this year, the expenses will be comparable at around $13 million or so. Voter registration, there's no KPI. Well, how many people will you be able to reach out to? There's no such figure. Whether one will register as a voter, that is their decision, that is their responsibility. But at least I need to know how many people you will reach out to. Whether they register is another matter. Under API, there are different categories, say online, TV stations, and so on. You will be able to tell how many people you've reached out to. In 2020, $13.49 million, about $8.79 million were spent on public transport system as well as publicity in the community. It's quite difficult to judge how many people registered because they have seen your advertisements or publicity products. We shouldn't spend $30 million this year just because we spend more or less the same amount in previous years. When I took a look at the previous flyers, they are quite boring. The design is actually similar. You put a box and then you put a tick next to the boxes. We need to make them more eye-catching. If we can make the products or the flyers more eye-catching, then we may as well save more money instead. We need to make sure the money spent is spent well. We need to ensure the promotional strategies are effective. Thank you. Yes, we need to make sure the publicity materials are eye-catching, but we also need to make sure all information is contained in the publicity materials. We need to draw their attention. We also need to make these materials appealing visually. Mr. Lai, thank you. Regarding expenses, I'll give a brief response. For the expenses in previous years, as Mr. Kenneth Fogg knows, the expenses range between $13 million and $40 million. The elements in the campaign are adjusted. Say in the past, more expenses would be on public transport. However, we have already changed our promotional strategies. Say we used to put out more advertisements in newspapers, but now we spend more resources on online. This will help us reach more audience of different ages. Well, I hope you will provide more figures in the information paper. Say how many people you've reached out to. Say above the age of 18, how many of them have you reached out to? Well, I understand there's no KPI as to the people who have registered. Whether one register as a voter or not, that is one civic responsibility. So please consider the member's view. The last member in this agenda item, Mr. Houghton Chow. Thank you, Chairman. Members have put forward valid views. Oftentimes, we remind residents in the community to update their address when they have moved houses. I'm not going to repeat the same point. For those who have reached the age of 18, it is their civic responsibilities to be registered as a voter. Just now, some members suggested asking teachers to help with promotion. We may consider this as well. The government holds many youth events or mega events. There are many different sports matches in different districts. We need to make good use of these events. We can promote VR campaigns in these events. We can encourage those who have reached the age of 18 to register. This way they can fulfill their civic responsibilities. If we take the first step, more people will follow suit and in the end register as a voter. The resources required will be fewer. Say if we promote VR campaigns in these events, we may need fewer resources. We will consider using this method. Thank you, Chairman.
Undersecretary. Thank you, Chairman. The Home Affairs Departments and the district offices will be involved in promoting voter registration. The 18 district offices will put up buntings, banners, and posters. Posters and leaflets will be distributed to community organizations for distribution. Our colleagues will establish street booths and open up counters for registering new voters and updating the information. The HYAB and the HAB will make use of the Youth Link as well as the Ethnic Minority Support Centers to promote the message of voter registration. Young people and ethnic minority people will be encouraged to sign up. Now, the care teams will also organize various activities. Leaflets will be handed out during home visits to promote the message. No follow-up question. That concludes this item. Thank you, Undersecretary and your team. Item 4, promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law. We will now invite the administration to come in. Members who would like to ask a question, you may now press the Request to Speak button. Undersecretary, if you are ready, you may start the presentation. I think you have a PowerPoint presentation to show us. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. I'm pleased to brief members on the work of this government to promote the Constitution and the Basic Law. Premier Li Qiang, as the third plenary session of the National People's Congress, mentioned that we need to steadfastly uphold one country, two systems, and Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and safeguard the constitutional order as enshrined in the Basic Law and the Constitution. Now, the Basic Law and the Constitution together form the constitutional basis and order of the Hong Kong SAR, providing a solid legal basis and constitutional framework for the country's basic policies on Hong Kong, including one country, two systems. It is the strongest safeguard for the long-term prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. That's why we need to inculcate a correct understanding among the people of these important laws and the safeguard they bring about. Now, the government has all along attached great importance to the promotion and education on the Constitution, the Basic Law, national security legislation, and one country, two system. Now, with the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee led by the Chief Secretary for Administration, we have been promoting the Constitution, the Basic Law, and national security. We have adopted a multi-pronged approach in promoting the concepts. There are programs facing students, teachers, civil servants, and the public as a whole. We have been organizing interesting activities and also reaching out to young people via social media platforms and promote the message with a soft touch. Now, members are very concerned on how we can effectively educate young people on the idea of basic law, constitution, and one country, two systems. Now, beyond the classroom, we have organized a wide range of fun activities to incentivize the public to learn about the basic law. For example, on the community and school level, we have roving exhibitions, workshops, and also roving exhibition vehicles, which pay visits to public housing estates and schools. We also have the Constitution and Basic Law Ambassador Program, as well as various knowledge challenges, as well as the National Education Day seminar. We are also cooperating with the RTHK to create programs and uploaded video clips and games online. Now, we are trying to extend the reach of our promotional campaign. We also provide subsidies to community bodies to conduct research and organize activities to strengthen our reach. Now, please refer to the paper for the actual work we have done. We have also prepared a video clip to showcase our work. Now, looking forward, the HKSAR government will continue to work on the solid foundation and further launch promotional campaign and education campaign on basic law, constitution, and national security. With an innovative and soft touch approach, we will promote the correct concept for constitution and basic law so that the public voluntarily and proactively uphold the constitutional order. Now, today I'm attending this meeting together with colleagues from the EDB and the HYAB. We will be pleased to take questions. Principal Assistant Secretary, please. Chairman, members, allow me to brief members on our work on promoting the basic law, constitution, and national security. We will share some video clips with the panel. Now, besides the CMAB, the HYAB and the EDB have also done a lot in terms of promotion of constitution and the basic law. Now, we have a large-scale outdoor advertisement campaign over the past 2 years. Now, we focus on the message of one country is like the roots of a tree, and also the more firmly the one country principle is upheld, the greater the strength of two systems. Another message is firmly safeguarding the constitutional order of the Hong Kong SAR as laid down by the Constitution and the Basic Law. Now, the large book represents the Basic Law and the Constitution, and above the book we have a prospering Hong Kong, and we also see a very cute panda on the building. These large banners are hung on the walls of government buildings and also community halls. Besides, we also put advertisements on public transport bodies, for example, tram bodies and bus bodies. The idea is to allow the message to reach more members of the public on a daily basis. Now, besides the large-scale outdoor advertisement campaign, we have collaborated with the RTHK to create programs and songs so that young people can receive the message better. Now, in the following, we are going to show 2 video clips for members. Now, this is a song called The Wing. So this is a very uplifting song. We use the metaphor of a family to present the relationship between the country and Hong Kong. Now, this is the roots and origin, the Constitution program, a 1-minute video clip.
馬克思列寧主義同毛澤東思想。馬列主義講嘅係如何建立社會主義國家嘅革命理論。毛澤東思想結合前人嘅理論同埋中國嘅具體情況，提出點樣喺中國進行革命。 去到1999年憲法修正案中加入咗鄧小平理論，就係講如何實事求是，促進社會同經濟發展。2004年嘅憲法修正案加入咗江澤民嘅3個代表重要思想，然後喺2018年加入胡錦濤嘅科學發展觀，以及習近平新時代中國特色社會主義思想。習近平思想明確咗中國特色社會主義嘅發展，確立咗國家嘅現代化同埋民族嘅復興作為目標。
係啦，咁咧
So the video, Written Origin of the Constitution, is actually a longer program. But we are aware of the short attention span nowadays, so we have edited the clip into a 1-minute video clip for social media platforms. So we have been uploading video clips and materials for promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law onto social media platform for the benefits of teachers and students. We also organized large-scale seminars. Now, during the National Constitution Day last year, we have launched a series of seminars themed Young Politician Constitution Day Special. We have invited prominent speakers to speak to more than 10,000 attendees. Now, the promotional efforts must start at a young age. So we target parents and their children, and we have organized seminars in shopping malls. Through knowledge quiz on the Basic Law and the Constitution, we hope that children can be exposed to the concepts at a young age. Now, this is the roving resource center and the game booth. They reach out to schools. Teachers can bring students to attend these activities, and students can get presents and souvenirs from the games. So these are the souvenirs we give out. So finally, this is an online mini game. We want the learning process to be fun. So where you see the owl and the train, that's a game we launched last year themed on traveling. Now you need to answer questions on Constitution and national security. Now when you have accumulated certain points, you can get a present. So it attracted some 41,000 players last year. Now the game gained the Sparks Award for Media Excellence last year. So finally, this is a multimedia promotional clip. Now the owl is the mascot of the Basic Law. Now we are creating a series of video clips featuring the origin of street names like the Boundary Street. It focuses on the history of one country, two systems. So this is a soft-touch approach for promoting the message. Thank you. Thank you. Now the floor is open to members. Each member will have 5 minutes, questions and answers included. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chairman. Now from the paper, I saw how much the government has done in promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law. Now the civil service is the main players in upholding national security and upholding one country, two systems. So it is necessary to mandate civil servants to undergo training on the matters. Now the effort has begun in earnest. So when will the entire civil service be covered? This year or next year? When will the work be completed?
Undersecretary, thank you. I thank Mr. Yim for recognizing the administration's work on promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law. Regarding civil service training, I'd like to give the floor to the CSB. Ms. Louise Low, please switch on the mic for Ms. Low. We have attached a lot of importance to the promotion of the Constitution and the Basic Law. We focus a lot on training. We arrange for training for different categories of civil servants, say for new joiners, irrespective of their ranks. It is compulsory for them to undergo training in relation to the Constitution and Basic Law. Regarding degree holders or posts requiring degree qualifications, they will have to undergo training in relation to the Constitution and the Basic Law. For middle rank civil servants, they will have to go to the mainland to undergo training, the scope of which covers the Constitution and the Basic Law as well. For in-service civil servants, we have seminars, say holistic approach to national security seminars, and we also have other kinds of seminars which are aimed at deepening the understanding of the Constitution and the Basic Law. Regarding the coverage, after all, with existing resources, we are already doing all that we can. We hold online seminars at the same time, and if we are to enhance coverage, we'll have to leverage technologies. We have been using online learning to provide training to civil servants. We have an online learning portal for civil servants. We provide a lot of different learning resources covering national affairs, national security, as well as patriotic education. It also covers national security education. It covers the latest information about national security law and the gists of the holistic approach to national security. National security issues as well as talks are also covered. When talks have finished, we post the talks online for civil servants to once again watch the seminars if they have not yet done so, or they act as refreshers. Well, you have done a lot already. Have you assessed the effect of these initiatives? Yes, we have. Thank you, Chairman. We attach a lot of importance to the results of training. We don't just count the number of training sessions. Instead, we focus on the results. For all courses, we have online discussions, classroom discussions, sharing, and tutors monitor the performance of students. We also have post-course surveys to collect feedback from students. For longer courses, say national affairs courses, we require students to work on learning reports or make reports. After the course, we ask civil servants about what they have learned after the course. We have pre-course and post-course surveys as well. We identify any change in the level of national identity both before and after the course. Have you engaged any consultant to gauge the long-term effectiveness of these initiatives? What you have mentioned just now is the post-course survey completed by civil servants. Just now you also mentioned the coverage is limited by the resources you have. You are doing whatever you can with existing resources. You rely on online materials for civil servants to read on the internet. This means quite a majority of civil servants haven't yet been able to attend the courses you arrange for. So in this regard, Have you thought about how to enable more civil servants to have an even more solid understanding of national affairs as well as other issues? Well, in relation to promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law, we not just focus on the contents of the provisions. We focus a lot on the mentality of civil servants. We foster a sense of national identity among civil servants. We want them to understand the importance of national identity and how it is linked to our country. 3 different seminars and talks. We enable civil servants to know more about our country, state, national affairs, as well as the holistic approach to national security, thereby enhancing their awareness about national security. After national security training, attendees said that they allowed them to have a good understanding of national security as well as the meaning behind the legislation. Their sense of national security has been enhanced, and that they also understand upholding national security is the responsibility of every single civil servant. We start with new joiners of the government. We want them to understand these concepts. We also have online learning to complement these initiatives. Next, Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. We can see that the administration has done a lot. There's a lot of publicity. Say we have origin and stream. There are also posters and billboards on the streets. I support these initiatives. Whether the Constitution or the Basic Law, I'd like to share with you. I've been in touch with some youngsters. I have prepared courses or classes for adolescents. Before we dive into the provisions, we need to emphasize the link between our country and the global landscape. We can also introduce the diplomatic difficulties that our country had faced. We need to introduce these historical facts to adolescents or to teenagers. If they have a good understanding of the global landscape, or the challenges posed by other countries on our country, the more they know, the better they will understand the challenges and difficulties we have been facing. Then they will understand why we have to uphold our Constitution steadfastly. This is my feeling after organizing classes for teenagers in Hong Kong. When we introduce provisions one by one, it will be quite boring or bland for teenagers. Instead, if we add more historical facts, say how we joined the WTO, World Trade Organizations, and when we introduce the challenges posed by other countries on our country, teenagers will be in a better position to understand the importance of safeguarding the sovereignty of our country. They will also understand why we have the Constitution and the Basic Law, as well as the principle of the one country, two systems. I understand these elements have been embedded into different learning materials, but you may as well consider enhancing these aspects. These will help. This is my view. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau to provide more information. As we introduced in the PowerPoint presentation, there are ways to catch the eyes of teenagers. At least we need to catch their eyeball. The videos cover a lot of different aspects, say provisions and so on. There are also anime videos. We want to introduce the concepts of the Constitution, basic law, as well as national affairs using a vivid manner. Mr. Yim, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Holden Chow, for your view. Yes, indeed, we are promoting the Constitution and the basic law through different approaches. Say there are different seminars or talks about promoting the basic law. We don't take a pedantic approach. We don't introduce provisions one by one. We introduce the background, the origin of the principle of one country, two systems, instead of diving right into the basic law. We'll continue with this initiative. Mr. Chow's suggestion is very good indeed. It may take some time to prepare for these classes and to train mentors or teachers. However, if we use modern-day examples, this will be a very good idea. Recently, I introduced the Hong Kong National Security Law to a group of about 40 students. I explained the challenges posed by other countries on our country, and they are immensely interested in these areas. They are not just interested in these areas, but then they have indeed a deep understanding of these areas. This is a very good phenomenon. When they are alive to the dangers or the challenges our country has been facing, then we'll know what protective tools we have. Why do we need such protection to help us? I hope you will continue with this initiative. Thank you. Next member, Dr. So Chang Wing. Thank you, Chairman. The administration has done a lot on promoting the Constitution and the basic law, not least the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. We can see such publicity everywhere across the city. We do need a mechanism to take stock of the initiatives. Has our understanding of the Constitution and the basic law improved? Well, I think the administration needs to have a mechanism to assess our understanding. I have questions for the administration. In your paper, you mentioned online publicity. In 2024, over 25 million hit rates. About these views, how many of the viewers finish watching the entire clip? Do you have any statistics to share with us? Do you have any figures to help you analyze the results of these initiatives, thereby helping you to enhance these policy initiatives? There are a lot of short clips. They are vivid. They have elements of stories. These videos need to be easy to remember. Otherwise, it may be difficult to hammer home the messages. On a different note, I recognize the work of the administration. That is the Rule of Law Education Stars Train Leaders Program. There are a total of 290 attendees. How can you make sure they can promote what they have learned in the community? Do you have any assessments of these attendees? Thank you.
係，多謝主席。
Under Secretary, thank you, Chair. First of all, I thank Dr. So for recognizing our work. Second, about our mechanism. It is constantly under review. We have always been promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law with various means. We have also taken stock of the number of attendees and the feedback of the attendees in various activities. And also, we have taken a tally of the viewership of the video clips we have uploaded to gauge how popular they are. That's how we have been monitoring the effectiveness of our promotional campaign. So we attach importance to both the quality and the quantity. Now, based on the changes in the social media platforms and the international world, we have been updating the approach. So we do have a mechanism to review our efforts. In terms of viewership, I would defer the question to the PAS. On the final question about the Role Star Train the Leaders program. Now, the DOJ is planning a third cohort of the program. Now, in the first and second cohorts, the trainees were actually trainers themselves. After receiving the training, they would become the trainer to train up other trainees. Many of the trainees are going to be teachers. So the graduates from the first two cohorts will be involved in delivering the program in the third cohort. The trainees come from departments and policy bureaus other than the DOJ as well. So in terms of the viewership, I would defer to the PAS. Now, when you watch short videos on social media platform, they are usually advertisements. So the viewership is calculated based on the figure provided by the social media platform. If a viewer watches the video for 15 to 30 seconds, that would count as a view. So we can actually get the information on whether the viewers or how long the viewers have watched the videos, or have they watched the video in full. Now, we are all competing for eyeballs nowadays, so we need to make these short videos information-packed and have a punch. No follow-up questions? Last member, Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Chairman. I'm very much involved in the promotion of Constitution and the Basic Law. I'm at the front line, so I think I need to participate in the discussion. Now, starting from 2021, the government has done many things right. First of all, the reach of the promotional campaign has become wider. For example, through changes in curriculum and whole school approach, the EDB has incorporated the elements in the junior secondary and senior secondary curriculums. Now, there are curriculums with various difficulties tailoring to the students. And also, we are ensuring that the message reach the hearts of the students. We ensured that students would take actions after learning the concept. And also, I recognize the government's efforts to train up the civil service. And you have been using the innovative media platforms. The RTHK has produced many good programs on the Constitution and the Basic Law. So I agree with Mr. Holden Chow and also the chairman. Every time I talk to students about the international landscape, everyone is excited. So in the process, they would understand the position of the country and Hong Kong more. So that is a good trend. So that's the praises I have. I have a question as well. So under the leadership of the steering committee on promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law, so there is a fund for promoting the concepts. So with patriotic education being made part of the curriculum, will that affect the purpose or the objective of the fund? What will the fund prioritize in? Under Secretary, well, I thank Dr. Hui Simon Lee for your contribution and your involvement in promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law. Now, on the usage of the fund, after the establishment of the Constitution and Basic Law Promotion Steering Committee, for the work of the two subgroups for funding research and activities, the funding will not be affected. So that's the short answer. The focus of the fund is different from that of the steering committee and patriotic education. The focus of patriotic education is on national identity and so on. On the other hand, the Constitution and the Basic Law is focused on the obligations and the rights of a citizen. And for Basic Law, we focus on the constitutional status of Hong Kong in the country's framework. Any follow-up question? So what are the priorities of the fund? PAS. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your questions. Now, when we begin assessing application for the next round of funding, we will study whether we can give more play to the community. Now, for the Constitution Day on the 4th of December, we may encourage community bodies to organize more educational activities surrounding the theme of Constitution. Under the fund, we will announce the directions when we start accepting applications for the next round. Now it is my turn. My question is for the Education Bureau. Paragraph 24, you said in the 2023 to 24 school years, more than 90,000 students and 450 schools have participated in the Constitution and Basic Law territory-wide inter-school competition. Now, I have been a guest for the competition at the primary school level myself. So what about the secondary school? Did you hold the inter-school competition for secondary school students? Now, in the past few years, the Education Bureau has done a lot to organize exchange sessions and knowledge tests for students. It includes the Constitution and Basic Law territory-wide inter-school competition. And together with the Security Bureau, we have held the territory-wide inter-school national security knowledge challenge. And also together with the DOJ, we have held another knowledge challenge. We also have an online knowledge quiz. Now, last year, when it was the 75th anniversary of the country's establishment, we have filmed videos with secondary school students to let them voice their views. We also have the Basic Law Ambassador covering 9,000 primary and secondary school students. Now, they are the leaders in flag-raising ceremony and also speeches given as the flag-raising ceremonies. So 450 schools. How many of them are primary schools and how many of them are secondary schools? So you mean Basic Law Students Ambassadors, we have 200 primary schools and 200 secondary schools participating, but the number has been on the rise. We will step up promotion because we think we can have Basic Law Students Ambassadors in every school. And our colleagues have put in a lot of efforts into this. For example, film viewing sessions and also flag-raising ceremonies and other activities. So now the coverage rate is some 50%. In other words, 50% of secondary and primary schools have joined the program. So you need to work on the remaining 50%. Now, for Basic Law Student Ambassador Training Scheme, that is the case. However, combining with other programs, I think the coverage rate is as high as 100%. Mr. Michael Lee, thank you, Chairman. Promoting the Constitution and the Basic Law is definitely something we need to do in depth, and we need to be persistent in the effort. Now, we have just seen the conclusion of the 2 sessions. Fellow representatives from the NPC and the CCPCC can also help. Now, Naja 2 is a blockbuster recently. Now, can we join hands with animators in the country to create promotional video clips? Can we also create a series of Naja-themed video clips to promote the Basic Law and the Constitution? And what about pandas? Can we feature giant pandas in our videos? Most importantly, we need to attract the eyeballs of the elderly, the middle-aged, and the youth. We need to pique the interest in the Basic Law. So I fully support the idea of the Basic Law Students Ambassadors Training Scheme. The important thing is to increase the number and enhance the quality of the training scheme. I believe you have been organizing regular seminars for the young people, and if they achieved a certain goal, they should be given a star. And they should be given awards. Now for student ambassadors who have done well, they should be given free tickets to opening ceremony of large infrastructure projects, for example, the Kai Tak Sports Park. Now, for foodways, you can exchange credits for presents. So can I exchange presents with my knowledge in Basic Law?
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with Mr. Lee that the promotion of Constitution and the Basic Law should be a sustainable task. We need to persevere in this line of work. I'd like to give the floor to my colleague from the Education Bureau to talk about initiatives among students. Regarding basic law ambassadors, one can check online the activities we have every month. They will go to watch the blockbuster Naja as well. They can save points. We went to Sichuan to watch pandas or to plant bamboos for the consumption of pandas. They not just watch pandas, there were also other activities, say aeronautical activities. Students have learned a lot. We also have teacher training on the reason activities, say watching Naja, the movie. We want to ride on this craze to enable students to learn more about the classics of our country. Well, I can see you have done a lot. You have done a lot and conducted a lot of activities both inside and outside classrooms. I'd like to emphasize one point. How can we ensure word of mouth? How can we ensure that we promote the message in the community? You can make good use of mobile trucks or community talks together with care teams in the community. For example, in Taiwan, you can team up with primary and secondary schools. You can spread the messages about the Constitution and the Basic Law to the community. And in response, Undersecretary, well, in the paper, it mentions different promotional methods. Say we have mobile trucks, we have different roving exhibitions, and so on. We'll consider engaging student volunteers as well. That wraps up the discussion of this agenda item. Agenda number 5, AOB. There being no other business, meeting adjourned. Thank you.